From Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And welcome back. I'm Mike, alcoholic, and today we are doing episode 5, step 1. And with me here in the studio today, I have my co-host Jen. Say hi, Jen.
Hi, guys.
Matt.
Hello.
And Jill.
Hello.
All right. So, are we ready to roll? We have discussed step 1 for most of our recovery, I think, if not every single day of my recovery. So, we're going to roll into step 1. And just so, if you don't know, you're new to recovery, there's a lot of ways this can be interpreted. Number 1 is the way it's interpreted as Alcoholics Anonymous interprets it, which is that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. The only step that has the word alcohol in it. And basically, for me anyway, it's just basically admitting that I have a problem. And I'm going to discuss my experience with step 1 because I have a few step 1 stories later. And I think Matt or Jennifer, y'all can take it and go with whatever you want. Just step 1 is what we're going to discuss today. And that's a Matt. Go right ahead, man.
All right. Well, I'm Matt. I'm definitely an alcoholic and an addict as well. And so step 1 for me, I know a lot of people, since I've come into the program, I hear a lot of people say, I had a problem with step 1. You know, they didn't want to admit. Me personally, just me, I had no problem with step 1. By the time I got here, I was done. I had nothing to cling to say, my life is still together and in any way, shape, or form. So, which I didn't know what step 1 was till I got in here. But when I read it and I started doing it with my sponsor, I was like, I'm pretty powerless, you know. And we did step 1 pretty quick when I filled the stuff out I had. I put alcohol and other substances before everything else in my life. That came first. Everything else came later. Dad, husband, employee, even taking care of myself on other things, you know, self-care type stuff. None of that mattered. The substances came first. And like I said, by the time I got here, there wasn't much anywhere, you know, no way to go but up from that point on. I had just had my tail whipped so bad. I was ready. I mean, I was just honestly ready at that point and got in a treatment center kind of by the grace of God. And they spent a long time in there and really kind of wrapped my mind around it before I ever got out and did any steps. We didn't do any in treatment. But by the time I got out, I was fully prepared. I had made up my mind. This is what we're going to do. And, you know, was basically unemployed, homeless, you know, wife gone, kids on, you know, nobody really wanted anything to do with me. So it wasn't, you know, the future wasn't looking real good at that point. So, I step 1 is every day for me. I mean, every single day that I get up, if I don't remember anything else, I have to remember that. And that gets easier. No matter the day I have, I can't drink and I can't use. So when I first got here, that word can't, that was for a long time. I can't drink and use. Today, I don't have to drink and use, if that makes any sense. Yeah. I don't, I know that I can't, but I also know that I don't want to anymore. And I don't know where that changed somewhere along this thing, but as time has gone on, because of this program and because of doing these steps and all the things that go with it, but starting with step 1 and being very thorough with that. And I work with other guys and I work with a lot of people in treatment and they're, you know, just bouncing things and talking to them and they're asking things. If you do step 1 right, you can work on everything from there, but you've got to thoroughly work that step. And any of the other ones we can revisit, as Bobby likes to say, revisit. But that's just got to be set in stone, and it the door is open from there on out. So I don't know if that helps at all, Jennifer.
All right. Well, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous via circumstance. I didn't roll through treatment centers. Wasn't cordially invited by a judge to attend AA meetings. I literally woke up one day and my life was in a shambles. And it was just one of those things where I couldn't continue to drink, but I just didn't know how I was going to live without drinking. It was a daily habit, blacking out or passing out for a number of years. But I was in a total case of denial. I'm a thoroughbred alcoholic. I come from a long line of alcoholics, purebred as well. I didn't venture off into other party favors, if you will, outside issues. I tried a few things in high school. It just wasn't my thing. But alcohol was my master. It was the solution, so I thought, but it was also contributed to a lot of my problems. But I couldn't tell you that I was an alcoholic because I had no idea what an alcoholic was. I thought we talk about it in the rooms. I thought it was the people that live under the bridge with the paper bag. Although my dad is an alcoholic and he did not live under a bridge with a paper bag. And so there's this case of denial. There's all of these things. And I can tell you the first time I ever drank, it was alcoholically. And for me to drink, the whole point was to get annihilated, wasted, blacked out, drunk. And the very first time I drank, I absolutely fell in love with that because as far back as I could remember, I never fit in. I felt less than or apart from, or everybody else got a script. I didn't get that script, or everybody had this secret to life, or a book to live by, and I just didn't get that. And so I never was comfortable in my own skin, but pour in some alcohol, that look of courage. I could dance better. I could talk to people better. I'm naturally loud, whether I'm sober, drunk, annihilated, it didn't matter. But for me, that was the only way to drink, was when I started to drink. The idea of drinking two of anything and going home and being a productive member of society was just, it never occurred to me that people really drank like that. I thought everybody drank to the point of oblivion, or, and I used to say, 3 sheets to the wind. Screw that. I was Bed Bath & Beyond, like the entire sheet department to the wind. And that's the way that I like to, and for a while it was fun. It worked until it didn't. And then it got to the point where I'm isolated on my patio playing, what is it? Fade to Black, Metallica, debating on how I was going to end my life. Or maybe it was I just was going to create this master plan and make people think that I needed help. I don't know. But, in that delusional thinking, however, the circumstances got me to the point where I could concede that, yes, I drank too much. And every time that I drank, all these problems would occur, and then things would pile up. And so I wake up on the morning of December 18th, and for me, that was the first time that I actually admitted to somebody else that I needed help. So I called the most spiritual person that I knew, which happened to be my grandmother. And, this is how far away from God that I was at the time. It didn't even occur to me that I could pray for myself. So I went to the most spiritual person that I knew, and I asked her to pray for me. And, through that conversation, she ended up calling me back later on. And she's like, well, your uncle's in the program.
She said the program, or did she say like in Alcoholics Anonymous?
She said it wasn't. She said your uncle is in the Alcoholics Anonymous, and
no, like when she said that, what went through your mind?
I don't even remember. I just remember I was open to hear whatever. So,
Okay.
I mean, I didn't feel the greatest that day. And so whatever help was being offered to me. She asked him if she asked me if he could call me, and he did, and we talked for 2 hours, and he told me about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He told me about the doctor's opinion. He told me about the program and the 12 steps. And the thing that stuck out the most to me when he told me about that phenomenon of craving, about when I start to drink, my body craves more and I can't stop. And that I was a textbook all along alcoholic, because I can remember walking around saying, well, I don't have to drink, which was a BS lie, because I didn't need an excuse to drink. If the day ended in a Y, it was a good enough excuse to drink, and it was daily. But when I do drink, I can't stop. It's like my off switch is broke. Well, that's textbook phenomenon of craving, that allergy. And you couple that with the way that my whole entire thought process was just screwed. The world hated me. I hated the world. I was this lone wolf, whatever. And so I mentioned the spirituality part, which was lack thereof. So I left that conversation with hope. I rolled into, it was the Yayas, and that was where I picked up my desire chip.
Where's the Yayas?
It's at the Broadmoor Methodist Church over off of Uri, and it's an all women's meeting.
They still?
I believe so.
Yeah, still open.
And then he told me about the Koala Club, and I went to my first meeting was the one that you actually do now, that Thursday night meeting.
Yeah.
But that's when Scooter did it, and it was like a big book study, and there's all these cross talking going on and cussing, and I had no clue what was going on.
It's the Wild West over there on Thursday.
It's a little different.
I like it though.
I've had that experience too, Jen. Trust me.
Somewhere along the way, somebody said the 90 meetings in 90 days. Well, I'm like, if I'm going to do this shit, I'm going to make it fit in my schedule. So early on, I wandered into the 5:30. And that became my home group. That became where I grew up in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where slowly I was able to get the solution. But, I walked into those rooms. Of course, that's a very long walk, walking into, and of course I didn't know, like.
Where'd you sit? Where did you sit when you walked in?
I believe I first sat in the second row, and the guy that used to be a horse trainer.
Ed?
Yes.
Ed.
Because and it was somebody's birthday. I can't remember. Maybe it was David's.
David,
Drew's brother David.
Yeah.
There was cake, and I had no clue what was going on, but I do remember Phil speaking, and maybe the subject was step 1, because he talked about that, how our body metabolizes alcohol, and he actually pulled me to the side that meeting and asked me, did I have a book? No. He gave me a 3rd edition big book. He buys books and off of eBay or whatever, and he keeps them in his truck for newcomers that roll in. And of course, the book doesn't work if it's a coaster, and mine stayed that way for quite some time. But I did the deal, or I started to do the deal, because there was no way that I could justify that I wasn't an alcoholic. And it was based on what my uncle had told me and what the people in the rooms, they didn't tell me I was an alcoholic. They told me how they came to the conclusion that they were an alcoholic. Then they told me, well, hate to break it to you, sis, but the only safe way from this deal is total abstinence, but you only have to do it one day at a time.
Yep.
So you can drink a whole keg tomorrow, but just for today, don't drink. And but not only that, they gave me a solution. And then they gave me the practical program of action to get to that solution. and with sponsorship and fellowship and all of those things, I was on my way. Now, I will say the only thing that I did not do in early recovery was not drink and go to meetings. All the rest of the things, I didn't. It just didn't come very easy to me. I was still trying to run my own lives, and I'm not going to get into the other steps, but I didn't fully concede to the rest of the program. I took what I needed, which is I'm going to not drink and come to these meetings and use my sponsor as the best friend and not a sponsor. But that worked for me. That eased me into submission, because eventually I got to the point where, I had to make some changes. But I have found with step one, I have to fully concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And because of that, my life is very unmanageable. But, when I work with sponsees, you can put anything in the place of alcohol, right? And even if I'm just a pure alcoholic, I always have other things that I'm trying to do, try to fix myself, right? Before I turn to the spiritual solution. I'm always trying to, do
it yourself.
The big book tells me deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, and it's covered up with all of those things. And I'm always, by nature, gonna look externally, and anything that I'm interested in, I need more of. Like the bottle says, take 2 Tylenol. Well, clearly, if I take 6 every 3 hours, the headache will go away quicker. That's just the rationality. Or, I drink non-alcoholic beverages alcoholically. At any given rate, on a work day, I've got my coffee, I've got my energy drink, I got my tea, water. And that's just the way that I roll. I'm addicted to more.
Sure.
So I have found that I am not only powerless over alcohol, I am powerless over people, places, and things. And the only thing that I can change based on that serenity prayer is my actions and my attitudes.
Sure. Very good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Some people I've heard say that their sponsors make them do a written first step. Any of y'all ever heard that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Nah, I usually work a written first. And what I tell my sponsees is like, I don't need your whole life story. This is for you. This is your evidence. And sometimes it works if you give several different examples of unmanageability and things that I did when I was using, or that I definitely wouldn't do sober, or, consequences, all of those, on those moments when, and especially in early recovery, when, I'm not fully submersed in the solution. So I'm still kind of raw. So I might, drinking, sometimes white knuckling it, whatever. And that's why I feel it's important to get into those steps pretty quickly. But anyways, I could pull those out, that evidence. That's my evidence. That is my fact-finding mission at least on step one. Well, maybe I shouldn't drink because I'll end up in jail or 6 feet under, or, wake up to who the hell is this? Whatever the things that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a written one as well, 5, 5, and 15. And I know Jill's going to tell her deal here on this, but I always share this with a sponsee. I don't ever read them all mine, but I always tell them this one. And this is why I just breezed into it. And I still have a hard time saying this. I don't say it very often. But my son Landry is fixing to be 12 in a couple of days. The day he was born in Jackson, my wife goes into labor. Okay,
that usually happens on the day they're born.
Normally, if you time it right, you got to get the timing down.
Occasionally, they just fall out.
Here's what happens. So it's a long delivery, and I have a child being born. Okay, I'm in a hospital room. I'm sick from withdrawal, all that stuff. Family's coming in the room, everybody. I call a guy to bring me some stuff up there. He doesn't have that stuff.
What?
Yeah, that I wanted. I said, what do you have? He said, I got the white girl, cocaine. Yeah. I said, bring it here. So you know the little bathroom where you wash your hands? Just go in, wash your hands like the doctor walks in and he steps in the room. I'm doing cocaine. My wife is in labor. Okay? I can't function 5 minutes without something in my body. I didn't get sober. I'm 5 years sober. I lived like that till he was 6, 7, every day. Yeah. So unmanageable, all that good stuff. I'm there, but it was, yeah. I'm not proud of that, but yeah. When I pull that out with a sponsee and I say, "This is where I was at," and they go, "Oh yeah, you're horrible," No. But yeah. So I do like it written because I get to pull that out and look at it, and I go, "Mm-hmm." So anyway, Jill.
Yes. All right. So a little bit about the first step. It's interesting to me looking back on, how delusional I was. Going into treatment, I knew I was going because I was literally sick. I mean, I was going through horrific withdrawals from opioids and didn't think I had a problem with alcohol because I hadn't drank in a couple of months. I had this reverse tolerance thing happen with the beer, and I all of a sudden just couldn't even drink one sip or I got like violently ill. But I knew that my life, I knew I was powerless. I knew I was unmanageable. I mean, you could look at it. Anybody could look at my life and see that. And even I could see that. But to me, it had nothing to do with my usage. No. I mean, I was, like I said, delusional. I hadn't really looked at my addiction in any other way other than blaming, justifying, being in denial, minimizing, whatever you want to say. I was doing all of that. So it was kind of, I knew I had a problem, and I knew I couldn't stop, but that wasn't like the reason why I had problems, if that makes any sense. So I did. I went to treatment, and that's where I did my first step 1. And my counselor was like, we want you to do the 5-5-15, name 5 ways you're unmanageable, 5 ways you're powerless, and 15 consequences. And I was able to fill that out really quickly. And I probably could have gone on and on and on with every single one of those. And you're right. There's something about writing that down and then reading it out loud and saying that to yourself. And then the counselor's like, most people don't do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is not normal because I'm going through arrest. I'm going through, DW, whatever, all kinds of stuff, fights. I mean, I got violent. I was violent, like aggravated battery once. And so, but that was a whole nother story. But actually what it was me getting honest with myself because I'd been bullshitting myself for so long, and poor me, everybody was against me. And, my life was just, it was just doomed. I got dealt the wrong deck of cards, whatever, all those kind of things. And I didn't understand till I was done with this. And actually, like years into all of this, that I was the common denominator in every single one of those consequences. And I don't think it is a coincidence. I quit drinking. None of that stuff has happened. I don't get arrested anymore. I don't get in trouble anymore. I don't get pulled over. Like, I don't have withdrawals. That's crazy. No, it really isn't. Actually, almost like I wish I knew that earlier. But it took what it took. And so I like the first step. And there's no convincing me that even now, after all these years, that I have a horrific problem, and that if I start, I'm going to go right back to the way I was using. And that was daily. And it was disgusting. And I can't go back to that because I know I will die. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that will be the end of me. I also know in my mind that I will lose everything. So that keeps things real for me, as far as my addiction goes, that it won't be good. It won't be good. But that's my take on the first step.
Yeah. The 12 and 12, I was just sitting here looking at the 12 and 12 on here. It describes the first step as a firm bedrock.
Sure.
And I like that. I like the way, and the rest of the 12 and 12, not the rest, I'm sorry. A lot of step 1 in the 12 and 12, and those out there who do not know what the 12 and 12 is, it's just a book that we use in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's one of the books that we use. But it describes step 1 as a firm bedrock in the very beginning, but it also talks about not necessarily waiting to get as bad as some of us were. Like we bring the bottom up, in early AA, you had to basically be sponsored into Alcoholics Anonymous. And generally that was a friend of a friend had to, get you in there. And it talks about how that, a lot of recovery has happened since that treatment centers have happened since 1939, and then again in 55 when this was written. But so a lot of that has happened since then. But back in the day, it was looked on like if you still had a watch, you wasn't worthy enough to come to AA.
Exactly.
And if you think about the 4 horsemen in the big book, what despair, terror, bewilderment, and frustration. If you think about those, the one horseman, okay, that never quite left me was despair. Kind of stuck around, it's like my first day, God banished the other 3, and he left that last one though. That last horseman stuck around for a while. So, I thought about step 1 way too much in my early sobriety. One, I can admit I'm powerless over alcohol. My life's unmanageable. Everybody and their brother knows I'm an alcoholic, and it's a good excuse for all of the stupid shit that I do. Okay. Oh, don't mind Mike. He's just an alcoholic. Or, seriously, he got another DUI. He's just an alcoholic. And it gave me an out. It gave me probably one of the best outs I could have ever had. And so I get into the rooms, and I'm thinking, I've got a lean on these folks, right? Because I'm going to openly admit I'm an alcoholic, and it's going to blow their mind. They don't have to convince me because I've convinced myself. And the powerless, that part right there, I'm going to talk about in just a second. But I had the unmanageable life, and I've talked to in the podcast before. I've talked about how I was a spoiled brat whenever I got into AA. I was just absolutely just a spoiled brat, and so my life being unmanageable. Besides the fact I would manage it from 1/2 gallon to the next, or, I could tell you how many pints were in a fifth, how many fifths in a 1/2 gallon, how many 1/2 gallons were in a divorce. I could tell you the formulas that work throughout, alcohol. But as far as an unmanageable life, the first time it dawned on me my life was unmanageable, I had slept on plastic sheets before, okay? I had been in mental institutions. I had been in rehabs. I had been to outpatient. I had been in trouble with the law. I had been to these places that I said I would never go, but yet I did not realize my life was unmanageable until I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and thought, what in the hell have I got myself into? How bad do you have to be to drink yourself into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous? And then I look around and I'm thinking, every single one of these people drank. I expected it to reek of alcohol in there first off, because everybody's either A, trying to save somebody, or B, still hungover, just trying to get out of trouble with the wife. Matter of fact, I went as far as whenever people were telling me about the program, this is mainly in treatment, I remember thinking, these 2 guys, they got together, and one of them wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with the help of a whole bunch of other guys. But, how much trouble with his wife was he really in to invent an entire program? This guy's got to be a genius, I probably don't need to do all that, but, But the unmanageable part didn't hit me until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I realized normal people don't do this. Now this is after 6 trips out to the bed and breakfast over there, waking up in plastic sheets or rooming with some guy that wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, strips off all his clothes, stands on the bed and starts doing siren noises. And all he warned me about was he does a little talking in his sleep. Hey, he did some talking, some walking, some dancing, and he even quoted part of the Gettysburg Address one night.
Wow.
Yeah. But yet my life wasn't unmanageable because
Historian.
Yeah, I mean he was quite the character. I just kind of took my plastic sheet, covered my face, and just tried to, get as far away from. I was terrified in there, but yet my life wasn't unmanageable. I'm going to do this. So, but I get to Rooms AA, and I'm openly admitting I'm powerless. And I get that sponsor. We've talked about that, and he wants to meet me, and we start talking about the steps, and we talk about step 1, and he explains to me, you've got to do it 100%. This is the one. You've got to do it 100%. And I said, I am thoroughly convinced I'm powerless over alcohol. I am never going to drink again. And he said, well, if you're powerless, how can you tell me you're never going to do it again? That kind of sounds like you have power. And I said, well, okay, let me try to rephrase that. And in my head, I was trying to be smart, but realistically, he got me. I can't say I'm never going to drink again. That gives me too much power over alcohol.
Sure.
But I didn't realize all that. So I did step 1, and we kind of just went through it. We read the big book. That's how we did the steps. I didn't do any of the paperwork, or I didn't do a written, I don't know about paperwork, but I didn't do a written step. And we get through all the hubbub of the written step and not the non-written step of the big book. And then we go to step 2, we get into we agnostics, and we talk a little bit about a higher power. Again, I'm open. Hey, I got a higher power. He tells me, yeah, it ain't working out for you too good, bro. You might want to figure out how your relationship's going there. And then we get on step 3, turn the wheel in life over to the care of God. Anyway, I don't want to have to go through all the steps, but this is where we were at. We were probably between 3 and 4, somewhere in there. And we really only done about a step a month. That was about, it took me about 10 months to do the 12 steps.
Yeah, me too.
And here's why. At 90 days sober, I was around 90 days sober, and I was estranged from my children. And we've talked before about my relationship with my children. And I was estranged from them, but me and my daughter were going to the track on a regular basis, and we're spending a lot of time exercising, and I really wanted to take her and her brother to Dallas. I want to take them to Six Flags or Hurricane Harbor, whatever it was. I wanted to do something with my kids, and I wanted to take them out of town, which doesn't make sense because we're grown now, and I don't do all that. So I really wanted to take them out of town, and me and my daughter were out the track, and I said, Savannah, I really want to take you and your brother to Dallas this weekend. It's like a Monday or Tuesday, and what do you think your mom's going to say? And, she's like, oh, no, you know how she is. She may say yes today, but tomorrow she may not. And I was like, well, yeah, we'll figure that part out. And she said, but you need to get on the internet and find some meetings. And I said, Savannah, we're going to be gone Saturday and Sunday. I'll be okay for a weekend. And she was 11 years old, and she turned around and she looked at me and she said, so now you have power over alcohol? 11-year-old girl said that to me out on the track out in Teague Parkway. It was actually one of the few days we went to Teague. We mostly went to Clyde Fent or to Brownlee. And when she said that, that pop of your head coming out of your ass, I heard the pop. And I never realized, again, Dale tried to explain that to me when we were doing the step, but I never realized it until I heard an 11-year-old girl tell me, So I went back. And I talked to Dale, and I said, maybe we're moving, a little too quick. Me and my daughter had this conversation. I didn't realize what powerless is. I said, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to drink again. And he said, under your own power, yes, sir, you are. Left up to you, you will drink again. Absolutely. He said, but I can't tell you will because I don't know that. But the chances are, if you go by your track record, you're going to drink again. And so we started the journey over, maybe a little faster, kind of went back through step 1. And that's where I realized that, I'm powerless over a lot of stuff. And we hear that when we get into rooms of AA. I'm powerless over, whatever it is. I'm powerless over men. I'm powerless over shopping. I'm powerless over whatever it is, But I realized whenever I got into the rooms that, all that matters right now is I'm powerless over alcohol. I have to have a power greater than myself because I am powerless. And what led me to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous was the unmanageability of my life. So I still can't manage my life, right? I to this day, I just can't. I'm very irresponsible and I kind of like being irresponsible, to be quite honest with you. But when it comes to a lot of stuff, I'm very irresponsible. And, I just it doesn't do anything to keep me not sober. I stay sober because I have a power greater than myself. And that's what I rely on for pretty much everything. But it took a while for me to understand, what I really am in control of. I used to take my guys when I first get them. That makes me sound like I go out and grab a bunch of guys. Come on, guys.
Plucking them up out of bar seats.
Yeah. When I go down to the local riverbank and pull a bunch of drunks out of the tank. But I used to have my guys take a notebook, and in that notebook, write down everything that they have power over. What do you actually control? And whenever I would get the notebook, I ultimately what would end up happening is we would get down to where there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing that they control, right? And it doesn't take the bite off of it. That's what the rest of the steps are for, right? That's what 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, that's what the rest of the steps are for, is to help take the bite off the fact that I can't accept the fact that I'm not in control. But it all started with that. And Jennifer said it spot on, is something we haven't talked about today, or she talked about, but we haven't as a group, the phenomenon of craving. Now here we're in the 21st century or whatever it is. What are we, 21st century, is that right? Or was 22nd? I don't know. We're up there in years. And I think we know now what causes the phenomenon of craving and the changes in the brain that occur whenever we are in our actual addiction, the physical changes in the brain that cause the phenomenon of craving. We've gotten there. We don't talk about it much in AA because it doesn't have anything to do with a spiritual solution, and I get that. But the phenomenon of craving is, to me, compared to, I tell you, I'm going to go 2 weeks, and all I'm going to eat is 200 calories a day, okay? And I know it. I know there's a couple people at the club that can do it, but I'm not pretty good at it, right? So let's just say I'm going to eat 200 calories a day, and 2 weeks into this, you say, hey, man, let me give you a Cheeto. And I'm looking at you like, ooh, there's 75 calories in that Cheeto, man. I'm going to spend I'm going to spend, 50% of my calories, or almost 50% of my calories on a Cheeto. But I take it because it looks so good, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, man, give me that Cheeto. And I eat that Cheeto, and all of a sudden, the phenomenon of craving kicks in. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, I have Little Debbie strung out all over the house, and Bluebell, and bags of Doritos and Cheetos. I mean, it's just, and to me, that's what the phenomenon of craving was like. And it still happens with me, not with alcohol. It happens with me with cookies, sweets. Anytime I ingest sugar, it's on. And I do it till I get sick.
Oh, let me just tell you, I mean, I'm 3 weeks out of a bodybuilding competition, and that's a very restrictive diet, restrictive lifestyle, and
probably no sugar, right?
No, not even artificial sugar. But I had one cheat meal, because you're allowed one cheat meal after the competition. I could not close the floodgates after that. I mean, I literally thought I was doing step 1 or step 0 in the step study the other night, and I literally announced that I thought I was going to have to take all of the 12 steps on sweets and donuts, because I had somehow not relapsed on food. But I think for me, that's a foreshadow of how I know 100% if I were to take a drink today, how I would handle that situation. It would start out as, okay, I'm just going to drink 2. And then the next thing I know, I'm way worse off than when I got here, and I'm sneaking around, and it's like I get some kind of satisfaction doing something I know I'm not supposed to be doing.
Do you Matt, I'll ask you, and I'll ask everybody, when you think about drinking, and I know I don't mean this like I'm sitting here and I'm obsessing over drinking. Okay, I'll give you my example. When I think about drinking, a beer does not pop into my head. A fifth does not pop into my head, right? When I think about eating a pizza, a slice doesn't pop into my head, okay? The whole pizza, the whole case, the whole fifth. Is it like that for you?
I know people are going to say, they may think this is not right. Even when I was actively drinking, I would go by and people were like having a barbecue or they're having dinner and they're all having a glass of wine, which I don't think I ever drank wine in my whole life. I wasn't a wine guy, but they're like, "Oh, would you like a
pinky?"
Yeah, I don't do all that. But they would go, "Oh, you want a glass of wine or a beer?" And I would literally look, like, just glance down, and there'd be a 6-pack of beer, and there's 3 dudes, and I'm like, where's the rest of it? Like, what are we doing here? And I wouldn't drink anything, not drink anything, because I'm like, that's a waste. I'm not setting this in motion with one beer, and now we have to go somewhere, you know? So, absolutely. It's funny. It's funny too now. I don't have the obsession with it or the craving with it, but I think y'all may experience that. But you get these weird moments as you go, just here and there, just the strangest stuff. So last year, year before last, 2 Thanksgivings ago, my ex was taking my kids out of town. I had 4 days off. I hooked my boat up. I'm going to the camp. Not talking to another soul. I'm excited. Finally off after 9 months of grind all year. I'm fired up. I'm driving out through, headed to the camp, out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing on my mind. Having a good day. I see out by Lake Vistano, they got all those beer joints, you know, out there in the middle of the woods. And I see neon lights and a arrow blinking coming up on me on the highway. Not thinking nothing. And I just kicked the blinker on. My hand just turns the blinker on in my truck. I look down and my blinker's on. And I was like, what are you doing? Isn't that weird? And it's like my brain didn't even, I never felt I don't know what that was. If it's muscle memory, yeah.
Muscle memory. And, you know, we do have those strange mental blank spots where, in the book tells us, we're without defense of the first drink if we are not in the spiritual solution.
But like, I kicked the blinker off, never hit the brakes on the truck, just kept right on going, went out to the camp. Here's how that progresses though. So the lady I'm dating, we've been dating about a year. Last year she comes out, and I go out to the camp a lot by myself. It's our family. My brother owns it, and you know, they drink and go out there and have a good time, and we go fishing all day. We go back to the camp that night, and I'm like, I don't know what's there food-wise, you know, so we're getting in there. It's like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. We walk in, and so I go to the refrigerator to see if there's water or whatever's in there, and I'm opening it up, and she's standing behind me, and she goes, do you come out here a lot by yourself? And I was like, yeah, all the time. Like, I kind of just come hang out. And I kind of stood back, and there's my brother's, all his humongous bottles of Crown are on top of the fridge, and there's beer jammed. And I'm like, it never even occurs to me. Like, I come out here all the time, and she pointed it out, but I just never thought about it. So I don't know. I get these weird little spots sometimes that are strange, but it used to be weird decades that were strange though. So now it's just kind of a blink, you know, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess that is muscle memory though.
Yeah, for me, I can remember when I was drinking, the guy that I was dating at the time, asked me to try to control my drinking. So maybe instead of drinking like a whole case a night, try to just drink a 6-pack. So we made that deal. So I take off to the store, and I come back, and of course I came back with a 6-pack of 24s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably, makes more sense to me.
And then he took one. And, you know, like you were talking about those formulas.
That relationship would have been over right then.
Right. And, but yeah, I hated any kind of function where you had to start drinking in the morning. I didn't hate them,
A lot of functions where you have to start drinking in the morning.
Well, parties or brunches, and you have to drink and try to be classy
If you're
with
having
mimosas
Pop-Tarts.
And I couldn't do it because
Birrios.
I would open those floodgates and I just couldn't close them back. And most people can go to these like a wedding shower brunch and then go home.
Take a shower, period. I gotta have some alcohol.
Not me. And so here I am, the one that's like 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'm passed out, throwing up, whatever. The whole unmanageability part, because my friends and I would go out to the bars on some of these occasions, and here I am in my 20s. And I'd get annihilated drunk, and I'd just hit a wall, and I'd call my mom to come pick me up. I mean, I was the least responsible, right? So here I am in my early 20s, and standing on the curb, people like, hey, do you need a ride? Nope, my mom's coming to pick me up. I mean, really?
You hit a wall, I hit the law, is what I hit. So you said something earlier, and I wanted to bring it up with you guys, and it's always fascinated me. And so I had a picture of Alcoholics Anonymous sitting in a room. I've said this many times. Bunch of grumpy old men. They're all mad because their wives made them go up there and they can't drink, so they're just sitting around cussing their bad luck, basically. And I was like, I don't want any part of that. Well, it couldn't be further from the truth. But it kept me out of places like that. And I don't know where that image came from. I don't know if it's my own head. I don't know if I saw a movie or something. I don't know what it was. But for years, that's what I thought. And I was like, I don't want any part of that junk. I'm not doing that. So I go to treatment and start going to meetings and do all that stuff. And of course, it's totally different than that. But now when I have people and a family member says, hey, your cousin is having problems with alcohol or whatever, or a friend or an employee or whoever, I don't go, hey, let's go to the AA meeting and work the 12 steps. You're going to get a sponsor. I don't do all that. And so I keep it real low key because I don't want them to have a preconceived of what it is. And so Ben is a great example of that. My friend Ben, we just released a thing on him today, but he'll tell you when all that got started, he came to me, he goes, what do I do? And I said, then come sit with me at a place and listen to some people that have the same problem. And that's all I told him. So he didn't know he was going to AA. He didn't know what he was doing. But I think when you get in there without that preconceived and you start going, oh, that guy, he's like me, and this person's like me, it's kind of an ease. I don't know. You get what I'm trying to say. Like, I think it goes a lot smoother for newer people if they're. Some people may not have those preconceived things, but I did, and I fought it, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I would have went earlier than I did. But do y'all deal with that at all?
Yeah, I don't know if it was the Hollywood interpretation or what, but it was, I thought that the only thing I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous was I thought people white-knuckled, and lamented or bitched about they wanted to drink and they couldn't drink, and somebody would get up and tell their story. And there was people that were these sponsor type people, and that you had to go around and tell everybody you were sorry. And that's about what I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. And again, furthest from the truth when you get into there. But
or even like they go, oh yeah, the meeting's at the Methodist church, and I go, oh, I ain't going over there. It's just church, man.
All I heard was meth.
Yeah, I'd have left the Odist out.
But I think for me, it's like that pride and ego where, I love the way Nelson says it best. About only an alcoholic could be face down in a ditch, and there's other alcoholics like further down in the ditch and looking down on them. And, my life was definitely not in any place to be considering myself better than anybody else, but this is the most humiliating or humbling thing is to walk into those rooms and say that you need help and accept it from people that you think are lowest of the scum of the earth, because that's one thing that I think gets beat into our minds all along, and maybe even still today, that alcoholism, you're an awful person. It's a personality trait. It's a you don't have the willpower, or you're just scum. It's maybe even today still not looked at as a disease.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to bring Tara, my girlfriend, into this, but she doesn't have a background with that as far as her personal life. I mean, she's had family members that have dealt with some of that stuff, but she's been to some sobriety stuff with me and some banquets and meetings. She's gone to a few meetings and stuff, and she's always like, she said, it fascinates me listening to everyone's story, because there's somewhere along the way they all go, something clicked, like you say, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, or something very traumatic happened, abuse happened, or something along that path. And she said it, and I said, you know what's crazy? I said, the more I listen to it, it's traumatic to whoever that person is. And one of us may go, oh, that's nothing, but it's traumatic to that person, whatever that is that triggers that, and, yeah, it's a weird deal, but I'm glad to be a part of it.
Me too.
So
I think that's for you. You hit the nail on the head. It's, I mean, the worst day of my life ended up being the biggest blessing.
Yeah, and those images too. Like, why would I think that it would just be all old men? Like, there would be no younger people, or any ladies. It would just be all mean old men, like old.
Well, there's nothing cool about AA.
I mean, there wasn't,
That's what went through my head. There ain't a cool person in their room.
I was like, this is the and here's like you said, alcoholic laying in the ditch talking crap about the other ones. Here I am living in a truck that wasn't my truck, okay? It was my buddy who was also an alcoholic and still is wide open, but he was nice enough, because I worked for him, to let me use the truck. Have no money for food, have no cell phone, have no nothing, okay? I'm literally living in a truck, and I'm looking at the people going in this meeting, and I'm like, I'll just stay in the truck. I think I'm just going to hang out at home here. I live in a van down by the river, at this point. And yeah, and I'm going, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm going to go kill myself in a minute, but I don't want to be a part of just some old grumpy guys sitting around. Like, what is jacked up about that? If it had been the old grumpy guys, I'd have been way better off sitting in there with them than where I was at. But I don't know. I don't know what that is that I,
So I had a friend one time, when I told her that I was gonna, hey, it's to the point, I'm gonna start getting help at Alcoholics Anonymous. And she's like, this is literally what she told me. She's like, Jennifer, you're not an alcoholic. They're going to laugh you out of the rooms. She said, there's people that go in there that literally can't, they spend all their money on alcohol and they can't buy their kids food or diapers. You're not an alcoholic. You're just bored. And so for a minute there, I pondered what she was saying. Thank God I didn't listen to her.
Well, I mean, I think any non-alcoholic would probably think that that's, you have to have that compulsion and that craving in order to understand what an alcoholic really goes through. Because, I mean, you look at some of these, we're not going to name any names, but some big timers who are alcoholics, and they're not selling anything to do anything. They just, once they start drinking, they cannot stop. Or when they try to quit, they can't quit, which it brings me to a point where we can, I'm going to read, and I'm not going to read a whole lot, but, the basis of step one is we learn that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step of recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently may be had to be smashed. That's it. It's not as, we've given our experience, of course, and a lot of different experience across the levels, from paper first steps to just going through the big book, or just having some, my daughter telling me what she told me that day, different experiences with step one, but it boils down to that. And I encourage anyone, read the big book, and that first one paragraph in the book of We Agnostics on page 44, the very first paragraph kind of sums it up, and it's what I said earlier. When you try to stop and you can't, normal people don't try to stop. That's just not something normal people do. Normal people don't show up at an AA meeting. That's just not something normal people do. When I was back when Google didn't even exist, so whatever search engine was there in 1997,
AOL,
and probably whatever I was searching, whenever I would search, am I an alcoholic? Well, normal people don't do that.
You had to wait on the phone to dial.
But but it took me a lot longer, I would say 15 years after that moment, in order for me to admit that I was an alcoholic, and, and that my life had become unmanageable. And thank God that I did. So, anybody got anything else to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, just remember this. You only have to stay sober today. If you're a newcomer out there and you're listening to this and it all sounds kind of jumbled up, or you don't like what you're hearing, but you don't like what you got, you only have to stay sober today. And that's all that I think the people that are at this podcast are doing, is just staying sober today. Tomorrow's going to take care of itself. And we appreciate all our listeners out there. And from Bossier City, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm.